Yo, what the fuck is good? So, I'm bored, and I'm at a point with my setup where I'm very content. As in, everything actually works properly for a decent, consistent amount of time. Is it perfect? No, of course, because nothing's perfect with VR hardware and it's very fucking finicky. So, I was gonna make a video on the troubleshooting I had to do, how I fixed it, general recommendations, and my setup and stuff. Just like a video on in general. I don't know. I just wanted to make it because I'm bored and yay. Okay, so basically the first thing I'll go over is my version of an ideal setup. What do I think is the best value for what you're getting in my personal preference of tracking? In my opinion, straight up, I'm just going to say it straight up, the best setup you could get for the money, if you're buying used on eBay, which is a valid option, don't hate on it, would be a Vive Pro, 2 base stations, 1.0s, and 3 3.0 trackers. Or 2.0s, but 3.0s for the sake of battery life. That's it. Oh, and index controllers, not wands. But yeah, that's just what I'm gonna say. Just gonna say that. Let's say you don't like that. What really is the difference between something with base stations and something with standalone tracking? Let's say you want to use a Quest. Well, the difference is the Quest has little funny cameras on it, right? They look at your room, so you're tracking from the inside out. The base stations are looking at you. They're not cameras, but essentially they're looking at you in a different way, from the outside in. So that's the difference. Is something that's tracking you from the outside in has less likely chance for you to lose tracking when you have something tracking inside out. Because this object's moving, they are stationary. Simple as that. That's the biggest difference in my opinion. That's the best way I can explain it. So, troubleshooting. A lot of times, shit just works, okay? But the more shit you have, the more issues you're gonna have. Because that's how it works. So, someone who had my ideal setup might have less issues than me. Because I'm running 8 trackers, wireless headset, with face tracking. So that could be a little bit taxing on the computer. Yeah. So the first thing I want to dive into as far as troubleshooting and where you might have issues is those funny little dongles you have. Now this is associated with anything that's base station tracked. This is the only reason you would have. Well, I guess if you have anything wireless, it's gotta have a dongle of some sort. But I'm referring to the Steam VR dongles, the things that pair your controllers and your trackers to your PC. Because they are not what's responsible for tracking it, but to communicate it with your PC of where it is. So your PC knows where to put the model. So the first thing I'm gonna mention is RFI, or radio frequency interference. That's one of the biggest factors depending on how many you have. Because if you only have 3, right, you have the 3 signals, and you have the 3 signals. But if you have 8, and you're like me and you're not using controllers to the headset for other reasons, you have 10. And then I have the wireless signal from this. I have the wireless signal from the mic. And then, you know, various other random on the 2.4 gigahertz band, like if your phone is using the Wi-Fi on that band, if you have another router, like I do for a Quest that's using the same band. Radio frequencies are everywhere. So you could just have a shit RFI environment like me, where you get jitter and stuff, which I'll explain later. But that's gonna be a problem if you have a bunch of them. So obviously, pretty much the only way you can solve that is by physically spreading out the dongles. So like, for example, don't put them next to each other. Put them like, you know, maybe a foot or two apart from each other. Because again, then it's gonna, you know, decrease the crosstalk between them. That's what you're trying to prevent. Now, obviously, it's gonna have a variation based off where you're moving and how far away you are from each one. And that's why they can lose signal sometimes or have weak signal. But for the most part, if you spread them out, you'll be fine. And when you have only like 3, it's probably not gonna be an issue. There's different types though. I've tried all of them so far. There's your standard Vive or Steam dongle you can buy from Tundra, or the ones that come with Vive Tracker. There's the Tundra dongles that you can find on eBay or on Tundra's website, but it's like, you know, the long rectangle one that looks stupid and can pair multiple to one USB. And then there's this weird spider shit that I just fucking got, and it looks really stupid and like a bomb, but it works very well. Now, why would you buy the different types? Well, you can save on USB ports, or you can save on just general, you know, tracking bandwidth. Now, why would you want to save on USB bandwidth? Well, because if you have 8 dongles plugged into a USB controller, it might overload it, leading to inconsistencies where one tracker is doing fine, but then 10 minutes later it starts taking a shit for like a minute or so and then coming back because it had a weak signal for a certain amount of time. So the bandwidth is going to control the actual signal strength. That's kind of that's not exactly what I'm trying to say, but for the most part, it's important. Okay, you need to keep consistent bandwidth, or bandwidth at all. You could just not have enough and it won't even work. So the solution I had for that is, if you don't want to buy another dongle, then buy a USB PCIe card. A lot of motherboards, even shitty pre-built ones, have extra PCIe lanes, and you can use those to put in a USB card. And essentially what that does is takes the load and stress off of your motherboard's USB controllers, so you can shift it to there, free up that one, put all the load here, or spread the load between them, depending on how much you already have on the motherboard. So you just want to spread the shit out. That's basically the gist of it. And the different types, what I noticed was the Vive dongles worked great, but it was hard to keep consistent tracking. The Tundra dongles worked really great, but they would also be inconsistent, not with tracking, but with the physical dongle. Like, it would just turn off sometimes, or flash the little lights, you know, causing like one tracker to disconnect for a second and come back. And when you have when I had 8 with all those happening, when there's 8 of them flashing, constantly disconnecting and reconnecting, it can cause SteamVR to just take a fucking shit everywhere. And it would just crash SteamVR, or it would just cause immense lag, and I would have to force quit SteamVR, and then force quit turn off the trackers manually because SteamVR didn't turn them off. So that was my problem with those. So then I moved to the spider dongle thing, and I have had almost no issues with it. It's running off one USB port, and it has sufficient power because it has a dedicated DC port that you plug into the wall, so it gets all its power from there, and it only needs the USB data to the board. It's not transferring power through there since it has dedicated power. I think that's the biggest difference here. I think if you wanted to use the Tundra dongles, I'm going to take a wild guess that the problem was power rather than bandwidth, or a combination of both. But I think you should get a USB plug-in that has one of those split ends where you plug it into the motherboard and it continues to travel data, and it has the other ends that has dedicated power. I think I haven't tried it because I just bought the dongle instead and stopped using Tundras, but I think if you got the Tundras and had that issue, that might fix your issue, or at least mitigate it to a point. I'm not sure, because again, I haven't done that, but so yeah, that's the different types. And I think another positive point to the spider dongle is it has physical antennas for portraying the signals further, rather than just the little USB shit. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about troubleshooting with the dongles. I can't think of anything off the top of my head about, making something better performance or not. I'll talk about the jitter a different time, or later in the video. The next thing I wanted to talk about was base stations. Now this is assuming you have a setup with them, of course. But if you have them, the first thing I'm going to tell you, you've probably heard this everywhere, is reflections. They don't like reflections because they're constantly emitting lasers that reflect off of them, and then that makes the tracking shit, as expected, because it's bouncing off of something and throwing off the position. So cover reflective surfaces. I have 3 monitors that I don't have to cover because they have a matte screen finish, so keep that in mind. I only have to cover my PC glass, which I don't even have to if I could just take it off and put the glass somewhere while I'm playing, but I made a little custom cover for it because I'm cool. I'm just like that. And then the TV's got a cover too. So yeah, just cover reflections. It's pretty obvious when the reflection is the problem, because it won't just the reflections act on something tracking. It won't necessarily teleport away. It'll just kind of like violently go around the point where it's supposed to be. That's what I noticed, at least, is it'll violently try to track where it is, but it doesn't know where it is. It's trying to get to that point, but it can't. Whenever something completely teleports off, I like to think of that as a communication issue with a dongle. Could be wrong, but from what I've noticed. So the one point, or I'll get to that after. Well, I was gonna say, and there's an example of a dongle taking a shit. See, guys, live example. Okay, so next thing I was gonna mention is, look at my little cheat sheet here. Oh yeah, if you have the 1.0s or the 2.0s, don't use sleep mode, okay? It's a little thing where you connect the base station Bluetooth to your PC, and then when you close SteamVR, it puts them in sleep mode, turning off the motors to save power, I guess. Don't use that. Why? Because you're actually causing, if you play VR consistently, you're causing the motor to constantly spin up and spin down. And that actually causes more stress than if you were to just leave it on all day. Because if you're going to play a consistent amount of time, just leave them on. Because then you don't have to wait for them to start up every time. It just doesn't make sense. Don't use it. Just don't use it. It puts more stress on them. And then, you're going to get a red light one day. The funny red light of death. Yeah, so I don't recommend using that. Plus, then you have to worry about the Bluetooth staying connected through a link box or whatever you're using to connect them to. If you have the 2.0s, they have a standby mode, which turns off the lasers, not the motor. I don't see a problem with that, but there's also no point of doing that, because why would you need to turn off the lasers? I guess technically it wears them down less, but not motor-wise, so I don't know. Whatever. I just wanted to mention it. From what I noticed, the placement matters a lot of where the center point of it is looking. So, for example, the FOV could be massive. You know what else is massive? Could be massive. But if your center point, or your FOV could be massive and the center point's off, then half that FOV could be looking at wasted area that you're not actually using. So I use this little app called Base Station FOV Viewer, and it shows you a line of the center point of where it's going. It works for 1 and 2.0 base stations. So I would just fuck around with that until you can get the center to face the center of your area roughly. That's what I recommend. The actual position of the base station, like being right side up or upside down, doesn't seem to matter. Even if it's sideways, the motor's pretty stable as long as the base station isn't moving or vibrating. Example, if you have a weak mount on the roof or on the wall and it's vibrating, that's going to be a problem, because then you're going to have excessive movement and your play space and your tracking is going to get all fucked up, because they're supposed to sit there and not move. That's literally the purpose of them. What is the difference between the 1.0 base stations and the 2.0 base stations? Well, the difference is the 1.0s have a little sync blaster. It's an array of LEDs. And I'm not going to go into detail of how it works, but essentially what it comes down to is it limits you to using 2 base stations. Okay, you can only have 2. Linked or unlinked, you can only have 2. The 2.0s don't have that blaster thing and lets you use up to 16. Why would you need 16? You don't. But you could. So, it lets you get more coverage, essentially. I have 4, exact. So, 1 each corner. Gets rid of every blind spot, pretty much. So, from what I noticed, it could just be my environment or something. But the 1.0s, for me, seem to be very, very stable compared to the 2.0s. The 2.0s give me this little jitter where if I have something sitting still, it'll seem to shake in place. And I don't know why, but the 1.0s just remove it. No jitter with the 1.0s. But for some weird reason, the 2.0s give me jitter. So that's pretty much the biggest difference, is the 2.0s have a better FOV, can get better coverage, but they seem to be less consistent or stable. The funny little thing called the head-mounted display. This thing right. This thing. Okay. So. I glaze Vive. Okay, you will not convince me in any way that I should get an Index over a Vive. And that's what I want to discuss first, is my opinions on the Index versus the Vive. So, we're going to talk about what are the positives of the Index. Why do people like the Index? Okay, they say it's comfortable. They say it looks nice. They say the refresh rate is cool. And the FOV is great. The mic is great. The audio headphones are great. Which is true for some people. I did not find it comfortable in any way. I do not like LCD displays because I'm so used to OLED, which the difference is colors, if you're wondering. So LCD looks completely different to me, and I can't stand it anymore because I'm so used to OLED. The FOV is great. I'm just someone who doesn't care about FOV, especially since I have prescription lenses, so it takes away from my FOV anyways. So the 144Hz refresh rate is great, but it's really only going to make a difference if you're playing Beat Saber or something fast-paced. If you're playing something like VR chat, no one's going to play on 144Hz. There is no way you're going to hit a consistent 144 frames to push that display in a world with avatars, unless you have everyone's hidden, but that's kind of boring. But there's no way you're gonna hit that, and if you do, congratulations. But in the end, it's really only gonna make a difference for fast-paced games like Beat Saber. So cool, I played Beat Saber with it. It's just not a good selling point for me. And the other advantage is the advantages I cannot counter, and I will completely agree with, is yes, amazing mic, amazing audio quality. It's great. Okay, it is really good, and yes, it does look very sexy. I'll give it to them. It looks really good. It just looks like a premium headset, even though it's very old now. It's considered outdated. It does look really good. Okay. Now the Vive. Why would someone want to buy a Vive? Okay, number one. It has OLED. Number two. The audio isn't terrible. The mic is fucking atrocious. But the headphones are actually very good, and I found them very comfortable because I prefer something touching my ears rather than the floating index ones. Just me. So yeah, I will not give it to them. It looks pretty ugly for that. And the number one counterpoint being it's wireless, completely wireless, and you can spin as many times as you want until it crashes inevitably. But it's wireless. I don't need to say anything else. So, one thing I want to mention before is the index cable tends to have more stress and breaks more often than the Vive cable. That's it. No argument. That it's just facts. Okay, Vive has an intelligent system where they wrap it around this way, so when you move the HMD, it doesn't break it or stress it on the connection point or the cable clip in the back. The index clearly has a flaw in that way, and it will break. Not saying the Vive is indestructible, but the index one is prone to break more often. Or micro break and have like static issues or weird effects on the screen. Display problems, basically. Which is kind of important when you're playing something that's right next to your eyes. Okay. So that's pretty much the biggest advantages, disadvantages. A lot of my opinions are obviously my opinions. All the issues I had, someone might not have. All the things I love about the Vive, someone might not like. It's all personal preference. I'm just explaining the differences and the raw facts between the headsets and which parts of them I enjoyed more than one another and why I chose this one over the Index. And no, I don't shit on the Index. It's not my favorite headset, but I don't shit on it. I only shit on the people who glaze it. That's fair. Now, I wanted to talk about the wireless adapter, specifically the Vive wireless adapter, because this thing does not work out of the box how it's supposed to work. Now, I'm using face tracking, which isn't even supposed to work at all, but even if you're using this with a normal Vive, no face tracking, you gotta do some shit. Number one being The first thing you should do when you get this is make sure you put it in a high bandwidth PCIe card or lane. Put that card in it like an X8 and go into BIOS and put the generation of that lane to like whatever your highest is. Mine's Gen 3 because my motherboard's not very current anymore. But just do that, okay? Just so it can eat up all the bandwidth it wants. Maybe your motherboard's goated and you have a second by 16. Use it on this stupid little PCIe card. Okay. Secondly, the little wireless receiver that's the coaxial cable screws into that card, it gets really hot, just like everything else on this headset. And my solution was straight up ripping off the top of it and allowing it to be free flow to air. And I used to have a fan on it, now I just have the AC kind of near it, just so it has air flowing on that shit. Okay, I will show. Here's the picture, but that's my solution. Secondly, some people have PCIe card issues, so I mean that's an easy fix. Just throw a fan in the case under it to blow in there. Same idea. As well as the antenna on the headset. Put a fan on that shit. There's a 3D printed mount you can get or order on eBay. Get that shit, because it'll get too fucking hot and it will crash in like a short amount of time. Not even a good play session. Secondly, I don't know if this is, I imagine this is still a bug because they don't really update this anymore considering how old it is. So for some reason, if your controllers in SteamVR settings are set to automatically turn off after 5 minutes or whatever, the wireless adapter turns off too, because apparently it's a controller. It is detected as an entire different device, so I don't know if something makes it think that Steam should turn it off if it's a controller. So just set it to never turn off the controllers, and there you go. Thirdly, go into Device Manager, sort your shit by connection, and find the PCIe card in your devices, and set all of the components of it, or the whatever's in the parent tree, to don't allow it to turn off in Windows, or let Windows allow it to turn off, the power setting basically, because it seemed to increase consistency at least. Because again, this thing's finicky. It's pushing all this bandwidth wirelessly, not expecting it to work perfect, but when it works really well. I haven't crashed a single time this whole recording. I hope I didn't jinx myself. Okay. So, and then the other downside of wireless is, you know, how do you get power, right? You need a battery. Well, it took me a while to find a battery that I was consistently liking, because it's either too heavy, too small, or it doesn't last long enough. And it's really hard to find a balance, right? Because where are you going to put the battery? Vive intended it to put that little hip pouch, but that battery sucks, so nothing else will fit in that pouch. You could put it on the headset, but it's a little bit heavy. Or you could do what I'm doing right now and buy the EOZ straps that have a plunger, or I'm tweaking. The EOZ straps that have a battery pouch on the back, right where my chest, behind my chest. There's a little pouch right there that basically just holds the shit. So the weight of the battery really doesn't matter at that point because all the weight is there. And you want something a little bit less bulky so you can lay down more comfortably, but I don't lay down too often, so for me it doesn't really matter. However, you need to get something that pushes, I believe, 18 watts for the Vive and 21 watts for the Vive Pro. And it needs to have the Quick Charge 3.0 feature on the battery. Anker has a lot of batteries that work perfect for this. I will link the one I'm using. It's not Anker. But you need to be careful of one thing that I'm going to mention later when I talk about face tracking. But yeah, basic general summary, you gotta have a battery. That's the downside. Let's say now that I've gotten that sorted out, let's say you're using a Quest or some sort of external headset that's not using native base stations. How is that going to work for you? How's that going to work with trackers? Well, you can use a program called OpenVR Space Calibrator, and essentially what it does is takes a reference object and sync the play space with the target object, so you can sync up your Quest to your tracker's position. Now, if one of them loses tracking, specifically the host object, then it can unsync them, and it'll be tracking fine, but you'll be shifted from where your reference is. So you can solve that by making a target object attached to your host object. So brutally tape a tracker to your headset. Solved, right? Yes and no. It works pretty good, but there's still weird latency, and it's never perfect, and it just kind of throws me off. And from someone who always uses like Vive trackers with base stations, everything base stations, it feels a little bit weird for me. I don't know, it's just me, but even with consistent space cal or continuous space calibration, it felt a little bit weird. Now it does solve the issue, it just is weird in my opinion. But other than that, using a Quest is a great option because you have wireless capabilities. It's a pretty good option for someone who's very active and doesn't mind a little bit of downtime or inconsistencies. Kind of the same as this wireless adapter. But yeah, the Quest, I think it's a good option, and it's cool to mix it up and have the capability of using any other headset. Trackers. Yay! So, how many do you need to actually use full body? Well, you only need 3, like the recommended setup. 1 for your little feeties, and then 1 for your hip, so you can do this. Now, is that completely acceptable and has really realistic movements? Because VRChat's IK is very intelligent? Yes. Now, could you buy more and be an idiot? Like me? Yes. I do not only have feet, but knees, elbows, and a chest. So 8. I have the maximum. You cannot buy more than that. Well, you could, but VRChat doesn't support more than this. So basically what that does is it separates the missing parts that the IK doesn't know, which is your chest from your hip. So for example, if I turned left, nothing's going to clip because it knows where my elbows and my chest are relative to each other. And when I bend this way, my chest will separate from the hip, giving the spine, middle torso area, more movement. So that can lead to better hip rolls if you're trying to do something freaky. The elbows help give better shoulder movement, and they allow the elbow to be upright more. It looks more natural on most avatars, and it gives you individual wrist movement, so this doesn't move with your wrist. And the knees are probably the least impactful, but for me it helps. I hate when the knees lock like this. And that's, you know, partly because of the avatar's proportion, but partly because you don't have the knee trackers. So what they do is they kind of just allow you to be more scaled with your avatar. Like, because if it knows where your knee and your hand are, it's going to connect them. And then it also gives you better seating positions and allows you to do things like go like this without your knees having a complete seizure because it knows where they are. So it's just, you know, just a little bit more realistic. Nothing huge, but some people like to be perfectionists. And, it, you know, it's worth the money for them. As far as placement goes, you know, I recommend I recommend you wear something like jeans so you can thread the track strap through the belt loops and wear it by itself or with another belt to like secure it. You know, the feet are feet. I recommend putting them on your foot, not your ankle, because then you can move your foot like this, so it's not just a solid piece. Elbows, I wear past the elbow, obviously, to separate it from the forearm, and I wear it like not on my bicep, but like right after the elbow here. The chest is chest, you know, you wear it in the front. You could wear it in the back, but I think it just works better in the front. And then the knees, I actually wear high up on my thigh, knots down here, because they tend to stay up a little bit better, and it's more comfortable. And that's pretty much all of that. And as far as straps go, there's billions of fucking straps. Okay, there's so many stupid straps. There's way too many options now. But I cannot recommend the EOZ ones, okay? Just, they're super expensive, but buy them. Okay. Specifically the VR chat ones. The blue, overpriced, stupid EOZ straps. Okay, buy them. Buy them. Okay, they're really good. Okay, I love them. I fucking love them. But they are mad expensive. But oh my god, they're perfect in every way. I can get all 8 of these on in like less than 5 minutes because the knees are magnetic. These just slide on. The feet just slide on. Tighten it with a little paracord thing like the index controllers. Chest is like, you know, a big bra with a zipper. And then, you know, the hip is a hip. I have it attached to jeans, so I just throw on this pair of jeans. And then I'm wearing a crop so that my shirt doesn't cover the tracker potentially. So these straps are just amazing. But if you don't have, you know, money, I honestly don't really know what to say because get creative. Unless you want to shell out the money for these, I can say they're very worth it. Even if you get the yellow EOZ straps instead of the blue ones, they're just as good. They're great. The only difference is I've had to adjust these straps once, and I just slide them on after that. The EOZ ones have Velcro, and that can wear out over time, so that's the only downside I could possibly see. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the straps. You know, personal preference at this point, but all I can say is nothing is more comfortable than these straps. I can wear these for hours. Also, another important thing with trackers is if you're not playing VR chat, because VR chat looks at your tracker's position and says, oh, that's a foot because it's near the foot. That looks like a chest because it's near the chest. Yeah, nothing else does that, only VR chat does. So in Steam VR, you need to go to controllers and assign each tracker what it is, and then use that tracker where it's supposed to go, or else everything's gonna get fucky wucky. That's if you're playing something like Blade and Sorcery, I think that gets fucked. Live, the capture software, if you want to use an avatar for that. Beat Saber's avatar mod probably needs that too. You know, anything that isn't VR chat and has some other IK probably needs it. A chill out VR, I haven't played that in a while. I don't know. I assume it probably doesn't need it because it's pretty good. Is face tracking worth it? In any sense, and in any method now, in this time, no. Is it cool? Depends. Some people say it's a little bit creepy and freaky, and some people say, holy shit, that's fucking cool. It depends. What are your options? Okay. Well, there's what I'm using, a Vive Pro Eye and a face tracker. Theoretically, the best setup as of now. Your other option would be the Quest Pro, the Vive XR Elite, the Vive, whatever the new one is. There's like a Vision something. And then there's the Focus 3. And you'll notice almost every single option I mentioned was from Vive, because I glaze Vive. This is another reason for me to glaze Vive, okay? Now, are all those options decent? I'm not sure. But there's also Pimax has eye tracking. And then the Vario Aero, the headset that's like a couple grand, average headset. It is an option. Whatever. The majority of these things have eye tracking rather than face tracking because that's an easier thing to implement because it's in the HMD and doesn't need something external looking at your lips. So, if you had to choose one or the other, eye tracking is definitely more expressive, and I think it looks better than lip tracking because it's a lot less complicated for avatars too, because you don't technically need blend shapes for eye tracking, because if your avatar has eye bones and it's set up with VRChat's eye look, then it'll automatically work with eye tracking. You won't be able to blink individually because there's no controller to differentiate that. But if the avatar doesn't have face tracking and it has eye movement, it'll just work. So, in my opinion, eye tracking is definitely more worth it. Keep in mind, none of face tracking is worth it at all. But if you were to choose one, I think eyes are the better option. Lips, your options are limited because if you have a headset without eye tracking or with it and you want to add lips, well, for the longest time and pretty much now, the only add-on face tracker is the Vive face tracker. There's Project Babel, which is shipping now, I think. But if you didn't get an order in, then I don't know when you can order those. But yeah, your option is pretty much the Vive face tracker, which used to be a pretty reasonable $150. Until Vive discontinued it, and now it's $700-800. You're lucky to find it for $5. I found it for $5 because I broke the other one. I'll explain later. So, I broke 2. So, is it really worth it? I don't know. Do you want to be able to move your eye and blink? Let me get this hair out of the way. See? Both eyes. Tongue. And this model, the jaw, it's a little bit smoothed out. It's not necessarily expressive. But, it depends on the model. For example, if I use this, it's a little bit more expressive. A little bit more fast-paced. It's so goofy. But you get the point. Is, you could do stuff that's very, very uncommon and not seen in VRChat. You'll get a pretty decent amount of attention. So for me it's worth it because, again, perfectionist. I like to have the best possible, and once I have something, it feels really shitty to not have it, so then I'm like, whoa, I fucking need that. So, Vive Pro Eye seems to be the best option for eye tracking. I haven't had much testing with anything else. From what I've seen, they don't look as promising, but a lot of those issues could be software related, like the Quest Pro not tracking your tongue. That's software, that's not hardware limitations. So it could be any better in the future and have more options in the future. So, what issues did I have with face tracking? Well, again, as I mentioned way back, this isn't even supposed to work wirelessly. Serenipol literally tells you the Vive facial tracker is not compatible with the Vive wireless adapter. Yet here I am using it. Because if you look at the VR chat face tracking forum thing, whatever, I'll link the website. It's a great website. You can buy this USB hub that essentially boosts the bandwidth of the Type-C. I don't know why it works, but for some reason it tricks the system and allows the face tracker to just work with wireless adapter. So that's how that works. Now it does cause inconsistencies and it can cause crashes more frequently. But if you use Serenipol, the 1.33 or something, I have to link it or find it on the website. Whatever, there's a very specific version that works more consistently and uses less resources than the newer versions. That goes for the Vive face tracker. I don't know about how that works with the other Vive software. I don't even know if they use Serenipol anymore. But for this hardware, that version's the best. Another thing you need to be careful about is don't buy a battery with voltage boost. This little shit, the face tracker, is very sensitive to its power input, and if you buy something that can have variation in voltage, then you can blow it up. And I blew up 2 of them. The first time I didn't know because I'm an idiot, and I bought another one and used it on the same battery, not knowing it was the battery, and blew up another one. So now I have 2 dead face trackers that are worth 500 plus sitting right over there, and I'm using my 3rd one, and I'm not gonna break it because I'm using my old battery now, not the other one that I bought that was fucky wucky. That's pretty much all the issues I had. I mean, a lot of this was just looking shit up, trying shit myself, but I've gotten it to a point where I can get this to run very consistently, even while recording. And my PC isn't really it's breaking a sweat, but it's not like dying. I mean, I'm averaging like probably maximum 70% on CPU and GPU, and that's at its max, so it usually isn't there. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to mention there. So how did I get here? Well, I started on a fucking quest like everyone else. Now, I've had this PC for a long time and I've upgraded it over time, but I haven't upgraded it since I got VR. I originally was on PC Quest, and then I, like a month into the game, saw someone with full body and got addicted to it and was like, holy fucking shit, I need it. And I got myself a Kinect because I had one laying around. So I tried that, and then I moved to the Vive trackers, and then I was like, okay, I experienced the shittiness of Space Calibrator and how inconsistent it is. So I got a Vive with index controllers, and then from there I started experimenting by trying my friend's trackers and being like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then, you know, it just goes from there. I got a bunch of trackers, got rid of a bunch of trackers, and then got back 3.0s, and now I'm at my setup where I am now, which is 8 3.0s with the blue VR chat straps, index controllers, Vive Pro Eye, face tracker, wireless, and I fucking love it. It's running great right now, and I wouldn't do anything to change it. I'm very content. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say, man. Yeah, I hope this was informative in some way, or at least entertaining. Um, I don't know why I wanted to make this video. I just wanted to. Yeah. Uh, I'm not someone who says like and subscribe. Fuck, that sounds weird. Okay, I don't know. Fucking have a good day or night, and thank you for watching. Please share this video. How's that for you? These nuts. See ya.
My boyfriend is great and Vibe is amazing.
Great outro. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yay!
There you go. Good job.
Yippee!